Continuing on with our series on 40 days. Thus far, we read about the 40 days and 40 nights during which God sent the flood. He flooded the earth. We've also talked about the 40 days required to embalm a body in Egypt. It seems to be, with that being the only context in the word, it seems to be that's the only place where that was happening. So I don't know that there's much significance to it, but we're reading every context. We don't want to miss anything. This context is going to be a little bit longer because we're looking at Exodus and we're also looking at Deuteronomy. Actually, we might as well go ahead and throw in Numbers as well. We'll see how long this goes, but I don't think it'll go too long. Anyway, we want to take a look at Moses staying on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights, and he did this 2 separate times. So let's go ahead and start with Exodus 24. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Come up to the Lord, you and Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel. You are to worship at a distance, but Moses alone is to approach the Lord. The others must not come near, and the people may not come up with him." When Moses went and told the people all the Lord's words and laws, they responded with one voice, "Everything the Lord has said, we will do." Moses then wrote down everything the Lord had said. He got up early the next morning and built an altar at the foot of the mountain and set up 12 stone pillars representing the 12 tribes of Israel. Then he sent young Israelite men, and they offered burnt offerings and sacrificed young bulls as fellowship offerings to the Lord. Moses took half of the blood and put it in bowls, and the other half he splashed against the altar. Then he took the book of the covenant and read it to the people. They responded, "We will do everything the Lord has said. We will obey." Moses then took the blood, sprinkled it on the people, and said, "This is the blood of the covenant that the Lord has made with you in accordance with all these words." Moses and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and the 70 elders of Israel went up and saw the God of Israel. Under his feet was something like a pavement made of lapis lazuli, as bright blue as the sky. But God did not raise his hand against these elders of the Israelites. They saw God, and they ate and drank. The Lord said to Moses, Come up to me on the mountain and stay here, and I will give you the tablets of stone with the law and the commandments I have written for their instruction. Then Moses set out with Joshua his aide, and Moses went up to the mountain of God. He said to the elders, "Wait here for us until we come back to you. Aaron and Hur are with you, and anyone involved in a dispute can go to them." When Moses went up on the mountain, the cloud covered it, and the glory of the Lord settled on Mount Sinai. For 6 days the cloud covered the mountain, and on the 7th day the Lord called to Moses from within the cloud. To the Israelites, the glory of the Lord looked like a consuming fire on top of the mountain. Then Moses entered the cloud as he went up on the mountain and stayed on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights. Okay, so you know the story. The Israelites disobeyed. They were rebellious and wicked. They were tired of waiting for Moses to come down from the mountain. Moses got angry. He broke the first tablets. Now he's gone back up to the mountain. Exodus 34. The Lord said to Moses, "Chisel out 2 stone tablets like the first ones, and I will write on them the words that were on the first tablets which you broke. Be ready in the morning, and then come up on Mount Sinai. Present yourself to me there on top of the mountain. No one is to come with you or be seen anywhere on the mountain. Not even the flocks and herds may graze in front of the mountain." So Moses chiseled out 2 stone tablets like the first ones and went up Mount Sinai early in the morning as the Lord had commanded him, and he carried the 2 stone tablets in his hands. Then the Lord came down in the cloud and stood there with him and proclaimed his name, the Lord. And he passed in front of Moses, proclaiming, the Lord, the compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness, maintaining love to thousands, and forgiving wickedness, rebellion, and sin. Yet he does not leave the guilty unpunished. He punishes the children and their children for the sin of the parents to the 3rd and 4th generation. Moses bowed to the ground at once and worshipped. "Lord," he said, "if I found favor in your eyes, then let the Lord go with us. Although this is a stiff-necked people, forgive our wickedness and our sin and take us as your inheritance." Then the Lord said, "I'm making a covenant with you. Before all your people, I will do wonders never before done in any nation in all the world. The people you live among will see how awesome is the work that I, the Lord, will do for you. Obey what I command you today. I will drive out before you the Amorites, Canaanites, Hittites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. Be careful not to make a treaty with those who live in the land where you are going, or they will be a snare among you. Break down their altars, smash their sacred stones, and cut down their Asherah poles. Do not worship any other god, for the Lord, whose name is jealous, is a jealous God. Be careful not to make a treaty with those who live in the land, for when they prostitute themselves to their gods and sacrifice to them, they will invite you, and you will eat their sacrifices. And when you choose some of their daughters as wives for your sons, and those daughters prostitute themselves to their gods, they will lead your sons to do the same. Do not make any idols. Celebrate the festival of unleavened bread. For 7 days eat bread made without yeast as I commanded you. Do this at the appointed time in the month of Aviv, for in that month you came out of Egypt. The first offspring of every womb belongs to me, including all the firstborn males of your livestock, whether from herd or flock. Redeem the firstborn donkey with a lamb, but if you do not redeem it, break its neck. Redeem all your firstborn sons. No one is to appear before me empty-handed. 6 days you shall labor, but on the 7th day you shall rest. Even during the plowing season and harvest, you must rest. Celebrate the festival of weeks with the first fruits of the wheat harvest, and the festival of ingathering at the turn of the year. 3 times a year all your men are to appear before the sovereign Lord, the God of Israel. I will drive out nations before you and enlarge your territory, and no one will covet your land when you go up 3 times a year to appear before the Lord your God. Do not offer the blood of a sacrifice to me with anything containing yeast, and do not let any of the sacrifice from the Passover festival remain until morning. Bring the best of the first fruits of your soil to the house of the Lord your God. Do not cook a young goat in its mother's milk. Then the Lord said to Moses, write down these words, for in accordance with these words I have made a covenant with you and with Israel. Moses was there with the Lord 40 days and 40 nights without eating bread or drinking water. And he wrote on the tablets the words of the covenant, the 10 commandments. When Moses came down from Mount Sinai with the 2 tablets of the covenant law in his hands, he was not aware that his face was radiant because he had spoken with the Lord. When Aaron and all the Israelites saw Moses, his face was radiant, and they were afraid to come near him. But Moses called to them, so Aaron and all the leaders of the community came back to him, and he spoke to them. Afterward, all the Israelites came near him, and he gave them all the commands the Lord had given him on Mount Sinai. When Moses finished speaking to them, he put a veil over his face. But whenever he entered the Lord's presence to speak with him, he removed the veil until he came out. And when he came out and told the Israelites what he had been commanded, they saw that his face was radiant. Then Moses would put the veil back over his face until he went in to speak with the Lord. Okay, so far, 40 days, 40 nights is the time that Moses spent up on Mount Sinai with the Lord without eating or drinking. Same amount of time that Jesus spent in the wilderness fasting as well. There's something about that. Now we're going to read from Numbers 13. Now what we're reading here has to do with, I think it'll probably say here, oh yes it will. Okay, you'll see what's going on here. Numbers 13, the Lord said to Moses, send some men to explore the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the Israelites. Now remember that the land of Canaan was given to the Israelites in Joshua 5, 40 years later, and you're about to find out why, if you don't know already, why they didn't inherit it right away. The Lord said to Moses, send some men to explore the land of Canaan, which I'm giving to the Israelites. From each ancestral tribe, send one of its leaders. So at the Lord's command, Moses sent them out from the desert of Paran. All of them were leaders of the Israelites. These are their names. Okay, I'm going to skip over the names. So if you want to read the names, they are in from verse 4 all the way to 15. Verse 16. These are the names of the men Moses sent to explore the land. Moses gave Hoshea, son of Nun, the name Joshua. Then Moses sent them to explore Canaan. He said, go up through the Negev and on into the hill country. See what the land is like and whether the people who live there are strong or weak, few or many. What kind of land do they live in? Is it good or bad? What kind of towns do they live in? Are they unwalled or fortified? How is the soil? Is it fertile or poor? Are there trees in it or not? Do your best to bring back some of the fruit of the land. It was the season for the first ripe grapes. So they went up and explored the land from the desert of Zin as far as Rehob, toward Lebo Hamath. They went up through the Negev and came to Hebron, where Ahiman, Shishai, and Talmai, the descendants of Anak, lived. Hebron had been built 7 years before Zoan in Egypt. When they reached the valley of Eshcol, they cut off a branch bearing a single cluster of grapes. 2 of them carried it on a pole between them, along with some pomegranates and figs. That place was called the Valley of Eshcol because of the cluster of grapes the Israelites cut off there. At the end of the 40 days, they returned from exploring the land. They came back to Moses and Aaron and the whole Israelite community at Kadesh in the desert of Paran. There they reported to them and to the whole assembly and showed them the fruit of the land. They gave Moses this account. We went into the land to which you sent us, and it does flow with milk and honey. Here is its fruit. But the people who live there are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large. We even saw descendants of Anak there. The Amalekites live in the Negev, the Hittites, Jebusites, and Amorites live in the hill country, and the Canaanites live near the sea along the Jordan. Then Caleb silenced the people before Moses and said, we should go up and take possession of the land, for we can certainly do it. But the men who had gone up with him said, we can't attack those people, they're stronger than we are. And they spread among the Israelites a bad report about the land they had explored. They said, the land we explored devours those living in it. All the people we saw there are of great size. We saw the Nephilim there. The descendants of Anak came from the Nephilim. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them. That night, all the members of the community raised their voices and wept aloud, and the Israelites grumbled. All the Israelites grumbled against Moses and Aaron, and the whole assembly said to them, if only we had died in Egypt or in this wilderness. Why is the Lord bringing us to this land only to let us fall by the sword? Our wives and children will be taken as plunder. Wouldn't it be better for us to go back to Egypt? And they said to each other, we should choose a leader and go back to Egypt. Then Moses and Aaron fell face down in front of the whole Israelite assembly gathered there. Joshua son of Nun and Caleb son of Jephunneh, who were among those who explored the land, tore their clothes and said to the entire Israelite assembly, the land we passed through and explored is exceedingly good. If the Lord is pleased with us, he will lead us into that land, a land flowing with milk and honey, and he will give it to us. Only do not rebel against the Lord, and do not be afraid of the people of the land, because we will devour them. Their protection is gone, but the Lord is with us. Do not be afraid of them. But the whole assembly talked about stoning them. Then the glory of the Lord appeared at the tent of meeting to all the Israelites. The Lord said to Moses, how long will these people treat me with contempt? How long will they refuse to believe in me, in spite of all the signs I performed among them? I will strike them down with a plague and destroy them, but I will make you into a nation greater and stronger than they. Moses said to the Lord, then the Egyptians will hear about it. By your power you brought these people up from among them, and they will tell the inhabitants of this land about it. They have already heard that you, Lord, are with these people, and that you, Lord, have been seen face to face, that your cloud stays over them, and that you go before them in a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. If you put all these people to death, leaving none alive, the nations who have heard this report about you will say, the Lord was not able to bring these people into the land that he promised them on oath, so he slaughtered them in the wilderness. Now may the Lord's strength be displayed, just as you have declared. The Lord is slow to anger, abounding in love, and forgiving sin and rebellion. Yet he does not leave the guilty unpunished. He punishes the children for the sin of the parents to the 3rd and 4th generation. In accordance with your great love, forgive the sin of this people, just as you have pardoned them from the time they left Egypt until now. The Lord replied, I have forgiven them as you asked. Nevertheless, as surely as I live, and as surely as the glory of the Lord fills the whole earth, not one of those who saw my glory and the signs I performed in Egypt and in the wilderness, but who disobeyed me and tested me 10 times, not one of them will ever see the land I promised on oath to their ancestors. No one who has treated me with contempt will ever see it. But because my servant Caleb has a different spirit and follows me wholeheartedly, I will bring him into the land he went to, and his descendants will inherit it. Since the Amalekites and the Canaanites are living in the valleys, turn back tomorrow and set out toward the desert along the route to the Red Sea. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, how long will this wicked community grumble against me? I have heard the complaints of these grumbling Israelites. So tell them, as surely as I live, declares the Lord, I will do to you the very thing I heard you say. In this wilderness, your bodies will fall, every one of you 20 years old or more, who was counted in the census and who has grumbled against me, not one of you will enter the land I swore with uplifted hand to make your home, except Caleb, son of Jephunneh, and Joshua, son of Nun. As for your children that you said would be taken as plunder, I will bring them in to enjoy the land you have rejected. But as for you, your bodies will fall in this wilderness. Your children will be shepherds here for 40 years, suffering for your unfaithfulness until the last of your bodies lies in the wilderness. For 40 years, 1 year for each of the 40 days you explored the land, you will suffer for your sins and know what it is like to have me against you. I, the Lord, have spoken, and I will surely do these things to this whole wicked community which has banded together against me. They will meet their end in this wilderness. Here they will die. I don't know about you, but I feel this so intensely right now, like the requirement for faith and the definition of faith. I mean, he is providing a definition in this example of what faith actually looks like. How dare you, after everything God has done, how dare you not believe that he will give you the land that he just commanded you to go take possession of? We better take this really seriously, because he wasn't messing around. I mean, he destroyed them. So the men Moses had sent to explore the land, who returned and made the whole community grumble against him by spreading a bad report about it. These men, who were responsible for spreading the bad report about the land, were struck down and died of a plague before the Lord. Of the men who went to explore the land, only Joshua, son of Nun, and Caleb, son of Jephunneh, survived. You know, last year when Tori was giving birth to Jeremiah, and I think this is so interesting because it's actually the anniversary of Jeremiah's birth. It's been 360 days since his birth. God days, of course, which I explained to you in other videos, so technically 354 24-hour days. Anyway, when we were experiencing all of that, and, and these false gods were trying to get us to bow down to them and sacrifice this child to them and everything else by lying, telling us that he was going to die and all of this. Connie actually had brought up this story to me and demonstrated the parallels. I mean, all of the things that God has done in us and for us, and how he's proven himself and made a name for himself in our own lives, not just in the word, but in our own lives, to then be afraid, right? I mean, like, my daughter wasn't even supposed to be able to get pregnant, supposedly. According to medicine, she wasn't supposed to be able to get pregnant. So here God's put this baby in her belly. He's given her a healthy pregnancy. He's drawn her to him. And all of us got put to the test. We really got put to the test. Were we going to bow down to the gods of man, or were we going to trust in him to deliver this baby that he created? So we all have our version of this, and probably more than one version of what's going on in terms of God making a name for himself and then testing to see, are we going to continue to believe in who he's demonstrated himself to be? My daughter got pregnant within a week after her wedding, when she was told she couldn't have babies. But see, God is going to prove himself. He's going to prove who he is to us, and then he's going to require us to stand in faith, and he's going to make sure that we're a sturdy structure, that we're not a wave tossed by the wind, that we don't look in the mirror and walk away and forget what we look like. Because people who do those things are not fit for the kingdom of heaven. And frankly, they don't deserve God. So, of the men who went to explore the land, only Joshua and Caleb survived. When Moses reported this to all the Israelites, they mourned bitterly. Early the next morning, they set out for the highest point in the hill country, saying, "Now we are ready to go up to the land the Lord promised. Surely we have sinned." But Moses said, "Why are you disobeying the Lord's command? This will not succeed. Do not go up, because the Lord is not with you. You will be defeated by your enemies, for the Amalekites and the Canaanites will face you there." Isn't that interesting? We do the same thing. We do the same wicked thing. Oh, now I'm ready. Now I'm ready. Nope. Because you did that, you're not going to be ready for another 40 years. So Moses says, because you've turned away from the Lord, he will not be with you, and you will fall by the sword. Nevertheless, in their presumption, they went up toward the highest point in the hill country, though neither Moses nor the ark of the Lord's covenant moved from the camp. Then the Amalekites and the Canaanites who lived in that country came down and attacked them and beat them down all the way to Hormah. Okay, now we're going to skip over to Deuteronomy 9. I know we're jumping around a lot, but I just want to kind of take a look at, this story all goes together, so I don't want to separate it out. But we're looking at, so what we've seen thus far is that Moses went up on Mount Sinai and fasted, did not eat or drink, spent this time with the Lord 40 days and 40 nights. Then we see that for 40 days, those who were sent to the land of Canaan to go explore the land of Canaan, they were there for 40 days. All who explored the land of Canaan, except for Caleb and Joshua, were afraid. And they came back and they gave a bad report and they made everybody else afraid. And then God wiped out all those who were 20 years old and older, who wickedly did not trust God. They did not believe that he had the ability, after everything that God had done, did not believe that he had the ability to protect them, that he had the ability to make them prevail. So we have to listen to that. We have to heed that warning. And so what he said is, you will not enter this land for another 40 years. So he had them wander in the wilderness, and you see what happened to those who were being presumptuous and decided that they were going to go up and take the land anyway. They got their butts kicked. Now we're going back to Deuteronomy. Let's see what happens here. Deuteronomy 9. Hear, Israel, you are about to cross the Jordan to go in and dispossess nations greater and stronger than you, with large cities that have walls up to the sky. The people are strong and tall, Anakites. You know about them and have heard it said, who can stand up against the Anakites? But be assured today that the Lord your God is the one who goes across ahead of you like a devouring fire. So, God could have, he could have made them shrimps, but he didn't. He made this a scary situation in order to test the people. Do you see that? God's been known to do these things. He's been known to take like a massive army and say, cut it down. Because if this massive army goes in, people are going to say that they did this by the work of their hands. So cut down the army. Tell everyone who's afraid, go home. Tell anyone who, I don't remember if it was the ones who lapped the water like dogs, if they were the ones who went home or what it was. But he's known to cut down an army. He doesn't need a big army. He can do whatever he wants. But what he's doing is he's revealing himself to his people and testing their hearts to see if they're going to remember who he is and what he's done and who he's revealed himself to be. Are they going to believe in him? And when they don't, he reasonably gets very angry about that and has been known to destroy people for not believing in him after he has revealed himself. So what do you think will happen to us? Do you think we have, it's a different situation for us? That faith was the burden of Jews, right? Faith was the burden of the Israelites. No, this is the kind of faith that God requires of us. And even more, in fact, because he sent his son. Be assured today that the Lord your God is the one who goes across ahead of you like a devouring fire. He will destroy them. He will subdue them before you, and you will drive them out and annihilate them quickly as the Lord has promised you. After the Lord your God has driven them out before you, do not say to yourself, the Lord has brought me here to take possession of this land because of my righteousness. No, it is on account of the wickedness of these nations, that the Lord is going to drive them out before you. It is not because of your righteousness or your integrity that you're going in to take possession of the land, but on account of the wickedness of these nations. The Lord your God will drive them out before you to accomplish what he swore to your fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Understand then that it is not because of your righteousness that the Lord your God is giving you this good land to possess, for you are a stiff-necked people. All right, so we're bouncing around a little bit in the account of what the people did in Moses going up on Mount Sinai. We're going back to that story. Remember this and never forget how you aroused the anger of the Lord your God in the wilderness. From the day you left Egypt until you arrived here, you have been rebellious against the Lord. At Horeb, you aroused the Lord's wrath so that he was angry enough to destroy you. When I went up on the mountain to receive the tablets of stone, the tablets of the covenant that the Lord had made with you, I stayed on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. I ate no bread and drank no water. The Lord gave me 2 stone tablets inscribed by the finger of God. On them were all the commandments the Lord proclaimed to you on the mountain of the fire on the day of the assembly. At the end of the 40 days and 40 nights, the Lord gave me 2 stone tablets, the tablets of the covenant. Then the Lord told me, go down from here at once, because your people whom you brought out of Egypt have become corrupt. They've turned away quickly from what I commanded them and have made an idol for themselves. And the Lord said to me, I've seen this people, and they are a stiff-necked people indeed. Let me alone, so that I may destroy them and blot out their name from under heaven. And I will make you into a nation stronger and more numerous than they. So I turned and went from the mountain while it was ablaze with fire, and the two tablets of the covenant were in my hands. When I looked, I saw that you had sinned against the Lord your God. You had made for yourselves an idol cast in the shape of a calf. You had turned aside quickly from the way the Lord had commanded you. So I took the two tablets and threw them out of my hands, breaking them to pieces before your eyes. Then once again I fell prostrate before the Lord for 40 days and 40 nights. I ate no bread and drank no water because of all the sin you had committed, doing what was evil in the Lord's sight, and so arousing his anger. Look at what Moses is doing. Like, he's afflicting himself in a major way. That's a major way to afflict yourself, to not eat or drink for 40 days for this wicked, stiff-necked people. And indeed, this is the Lord doing this through Moses, because no human being alone can care that much about people, especially wicked people who don't even have the sense to care for themselves. This is the heart of God. I fear the anger and wrath of the Lord, for he was angry enough with you to destroy you. But again, the Lord listened to me. And the Lord was angry enough with Aaron to destroy him, but at that time I prayed for Aaron too. Also, I took that sinful thing of yours, the calf you had made, and burned it in the fire. Then I crushed it and ground it into powder as fine as dust and threw the dust into a stream that flowed down the mountain. You also made the Lord angry at Taberah and Massah and at Kibroth Hattaavah. And when the Lord sent you from Kadesh Barnea, he said, Go up and take possession of the land I've given you. But you rebelled against the command of the Lord your God. You did not trust him or obey him. I'm going to say it again. You did not trust him or obey him. What is the relationship that I tell you all the time that you have to have with God? Obedience, submission, reliance. He doesn't have any use for the work of your hands. What does he need? What does he need from you? What he wants is submission, obedience, and reliance. So you see right here that Moses is rebuking them, and he's saying you did not trust him or obey him. You have been rebellious against the Lord ever since I've known you. I lay prostrate before the Lord those 40 days and 40 nights because the Lord had said he was going to destroy you. I prayed to the Lord and said, Sovereign Lord, do not destroy your people, your own inheritance, that you redeemed by your great power and brought up out of Egypt with a mighty hand. Remember your servants, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Overlook the stubbornness of this people, their wickedness and their sin. Otherwise the country from which you brought us will say, because the Lord was not able to take them into the land he had promised them, and because he hated them, he brought them out to put them to death in the wilderness. But they are your people, your inheritance that you brought out by your great power and your outstretched arm. The thing I keep hearing here is we cannot take him for granted. We cannot take him for granted. You see what happens to people who take him for granted. At that time, the Lord said to me, Chisel out 2 stone tablets like the first ones and come up to me on the mountain. Also make a wooden ark. I will write on the tablets the words that were on the first tablets which you broke. They are to put them in the ark. So I made the ark out of acacia wood and chiseled out 2 stone tablets like the first ones, and I went up on the mountain with 2 tablets in my hands. The Lord wrote on these tablets what he had written before, the 10 commandments he had proclaimed to you on the mountain out of the fire on the day of the assembly, and the Lord gave them to me. Then I came back down the mountain and put the tablets in the ark I had made, as the Lord commanded me, as they are now. The Israelites traveled from the wells of Bene Jaakan to Moserah. There Aaron died and was buried, and Eleazar, his son, succeeded him as priest. From there they traveled to Gudgoda and on to Jotbatha, a land with streams of water. At that time the Lord set apart the tribe of Levi to carry the ark of the covenant of the Lord, to stand before the Lord, to minister and to pronounce blessings in his name, as they still do today. That is why the Levites have no share or inheritance among their fellow Israelites. The Lord is their inheritance, as the Lord your God told them. Now I had stayed on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights, as I did the first time, and the Lord listened to me at this time also. It was not his will to destroy you. Go, the Lord said to me, and lead the people on their way, so that they may enter and possess the land I swore to their ancestors to give them. And now, Israel, what does the Lord your God ask of you but to fear the Lord your God, to walk in obedience to him, to love him, to serve the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul, and to observe the Lord's commands and decrees I am giving you today for your own good? Let's read that again, because he just got done telling you exactly what your relationship is with him, exactly what he requires. And now, Israel, what does the Lord your God ask of you but to fear the Lord your God, to walk in obedience to him, to love him, to serve the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul, and to observe the Lord's commands and decrees that I'm giving you today for your own good. To the Lord your God belong the heavens, even the highest heavens, the earth, and everything in it. Yet the Lord set his affection on your ancestors and loved them, and he chose you, their descendants, above all the nations, as it is today. Circumcise your hearts, therefore, and do not be stiff-necked any longer. For the Lord your God is God of gods and Lord of lords, the great God, mighty and awesome, who shows no partiality and accepts no bribes. He defends the cause of the fatherless and the widow, and loves the foreigner residing among you, giving them food and clothing. And you are to love those who are foreigners, for you yourselves were foreigners in Egypt. Fear the Lord your God and serve him. Hold fast to him and take your oaths in his name. He is the one you praise. He is your God, who performed for you those great and awesome wonders you saw with your own eyes. Your ancestors who went down into Egypt were 70 in all, and now the Lord your God has made you as numerous as the stars in the sky. This just quickly became one of my favorite chapters. This is such an awesome, clear chapter. This whole study was awesome. I feel like I just really can see, first of all, the glory of God, the name he's made for himself, the heart of God, what he is requiring of us, and also the wrath of God for those who don't believe in him. I mean, the definition of belief is being laid out in these examples. And I know this study is really on the 40 days, but boy, I just got so much more out of it. All right, so what is the correlation with 40 days? Put your comments in the comment section. What is it that you're hearing about 40 days? What's the association here? This is an atonement of sorts. Moses has taken this on himself to repent on behalf of the Israelites and to plead with God not to destroy them, at least in the second time. In the first time, 40 days and 40 nights, he's spending with God in order to receive the instructions, the covenant. And one thing I'll tell you from my own experience with fasting is that fasting brings you into the presence of God. You have made the decision to weaken yourself in order for God's power to rest on you and to circumcise from the sinful flesh and discipline your physical flesh. It's very, very powerful. It is incredibly powerful. And so for Moses to receive the covenant from God and to go into the presence of God, I feel an implication here that, I mean, we have to get into a certain kind of position in order to have that kind of depth of relationship and intimacy with God. I think intimacy is probably the right word, because what we're doing is we're reducing ourselves in understanding of who we are before him, reducing ourselves so that we have a real connection with him. When we're distracted, when we're inflaming our flesh, when we're, doing all of these other things, we rise up and we don't really have like a good reality check of who we are before God and who he is before us. So that's part of what I get out of this 40 days and 40 nights. What do you get? Put your comments in the comment section. Let's have a dialogue about this. Thank you for listening. Please discern with God.